Like, it's on Netflix. Like, The
Yeah.
Babysitter. Are you freaking serious, dude? I'm like genuinely excited over that, over books that I read 20 freaking years ago. Welcome back to the Austin and Matt podcast. This is Matt.
This is Austin.
This is episode 18, and we watched A Costume for Nicolas. But before we get into that, Austin, what did you watch this week?
Yeah, man. So I watched two things, and we actually watched them back to back, which was pretty awesome timing on our part. So I talked about it last week, where we watched part one of the Fear Street series that Netflix is doing right now. So Fear Street, if you didn't know, it was written by R.L. Stein. So it kind of has like that Goosebumps feeling to it.
Okay, wait a second. Dude, I'm like 90% sure I read Fear Street in like 5th grade. Like when you said Fear Street, I was like, is that R.L. Stein? That's crazy, dude. And so, okay, tell me the plot give me like the gist of the plot real quick. Because now I'm like super curious if I read it.
Yeah, so I guess like a quick synopsis of just kind of like the intro to it is that there's two towns, Shadyville and Sunnyville. They are neighboring towns, whereas it seems like all of the bad luck happens in Shadyville, whereas Sunnyville is where everything good happens. Now, Shadyville, the capital of serial killers, is kind of like their big story. And anytime a serial killer comes around, which is every couple years, they blame it on a witch, which is Sarah Fire, who was killed back in 1666, and her hand was cut off, and she used the hand to hold a grasp onto the land to forever curse it. And so now we're coming into the story where another serial killer has arisen, and really they're just trying to like figure out what's going on a little bit more.
Yeah, so I did not read these, but he came out with a bunch of kind of like teen stuff. Like there was one called The Babysitter, and there was 3 of them, and I read all 3 of them. And then
they also did The Babysitter.
They did The Babysitter?
Yeah.
Like it's on Netflix. Like The Babysitter. Are you freaking serious, dude? I'm like genuinely excited over that, over books that I read 20 freaking years ago. And there was another stepsister who was always like stealing her boyfriends. And there was several of them, but I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, that's I think the little 5th grader in me is getting super excited about that.
So going back into it though, Fear Street, they made it a trilogy movie, so 3 different movies, and the way how they released it is they released one next week, they released another one, and then they released the final one on the 3rd week. So we didn't watch it the first week it came out. So we watched the first episode, and then we waited the following week, and we watched part 2 and part 3, and that's how we watched it in order. But honestly, like the type of horror that it is very much like that, more of that classic horror style. A lot of like the Conjuring and Insidious and things like that, like really throw you into like the big bad scary, where this was more like horror mystery in a way. And we had a really good time. We had a lot of fun with it, and there's some twists, some turns, because they did 3 different movies and it hits 3 different time periods. They end up like reusing some actors as like legacies. So like one of the characters, he's the sheriff of the town, but he also plays another character in 6066 as like that person's great grandfather or whatever the heck, like however.
Okay.
So they had like a lot of legacy stuff going on, which I thought it was a pretty cool, pretty neat trick. That way they didn't have to like find all these different actors and actresses to try to get them like look alike. But it's nice to see one person who was like a really just like kind and caring person. All of a sudden, the next movie, they're just like stirring the pot, causing drama, and just like showing a little bit more of like the actor's range. So really enjoyed them. If you ever get Netflix back, I highly recommend you go back and you watch those. They're pretty intriguing, and they're not too gory. I will say that like there is gore to them, but it's not too gory. But yeah, that's really what I watched this week. What did you watch?
I watched Well, first, okay, so a really fun one that I watched was Shazam. And weirdly enough, like I really thought this came out just last year, but it turns out it came out in 2019, and I finally got around to watching it. My wife and I watched it. It is, I think we've talked about, like, we're not huge fans of the non-animated DC stuff. This was probably the first thing that I've seen that's non-animated from DC in a long time that I was like, I really liked that. And I think that is because it doesn't take itself quite as seriously, and it's a lot of fun. My wife and I really liked the show Chuck, and so to get to see Zachary Levi come back playing Chuck was a lot of fun. There was some stuff at the ending that I think tonally they had a hard time hitting the exact right stride. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but something happened where I was like, this is a lot of fun, but it's also not quite working as well as I think it could have. So that was a lot of fun. Enjoyed that. I really wonder if we're going to see much of Shazam in the bigger DC movies, because tonally, I just don't think he'll fit in. I think that would, well, I guess The Flash is pretty lighthearted and fun. And so I guess for Shazam to show up and kind of interact with him actually could be a lot of fun. So I now that I'm saying this, I'm like, okay, I'd like to see that. That would be good. So,
just curious, do you know who the big bad to Shazam is?
Black Adam.
Yeah, and did you know they're making a Black Adam movie that just barely finished filming?
Yeah, and Dwayne The Rock Johnson's playing him, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
yeah.
So like this Shazam 2 movie is like almost done too.
And I'm assuming Shazam 2, he's going to be fighting Black Adam, or is more like this Black Adam movie and Shazam 2 are kind of going to build up to Zachary Levi and The Rock fighting each other in a third Shazam movie?
That is a great question. I want to say Black Adam is a separate movie. Yeah. So Black Adam will be coming out next year, and then Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods will be coming out the following year.
Okay, cool. That's interesting. So I watched that. I finished Primal. I wasn't even going to talk about it, but I liked the ending so much that I was like, I'm going to talk about it again. It ended fantastically. It ended really good. I was really surprised because watching this, I was like, this is only going to be like a cool 10 episode, one season short thing, and it'll be done. And then it ends in a way that was like, oh, okay. Well, there's going to be a second season, I guess. And now I'm really excited for the second season. So it had some interesting things happen there. I have suspicions.
10, what would you give it?
Probably like a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. Like, really enjoyed it. Yeah, the animation's great. It was really, really cool. Some of the episodes later on really just got super, super cool. So I watched that. I revisited 28 Weeks Later, which I saw in the theater when I was 19 and actually really liked it. And the story behind that too is that I watched 28 Days Later. I still just think 28 Days Later is like okay. And then I think 28 Weeks Later is awesome. And would still love to see a 28 months later, 28 years later, 28,000 years later. I'm really hoping we eventually end up in serious sci-fi here. That's a joke, by the way. So I watched that. I definitely can't stomach things as well as I did when I was 19. There was a scene in it where I was like, because I was doing stairs. I'm doing stairs now for an hour. And so I was watching it while I did stairs. And there was a scene where I was like, I definitely know what's about to happen, and I'm definitely going to be fast forwarding because it is a very gross, violent scene. So I cut that out. That's all I really got to this week, though.
Side note, my wife loves the 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later movies.
Oh, really? 28 Days Later is just okay. I don't know. I'm not in love with it. But the guy who did it, the guy who directed it, his name is Danny Boyle. He directed 28 Days Later. He directed Millions. He directed Sunshine. He directed Slumdog Millionaire. He directed 27 Hours, the James Franco one about the guy who cut his arm off. That's not a spoiler. That's a thing that happened in the news.
127 hours?
127 hours. Yeah, that one. So like when it comes to like the movie Millions and the movie Sunshine, like Danny Boyle is one of my very favorite directors, actually. So knowing that he did 28 Days Later it's like cool. I'm glad that he kind of got his start there. but I like his later stuff quite a bit more. He didn't direct 28 Weeks Later, but I think he's talked about if they did it 28 months later that he would maybe direct it, which is kind of cool. A costume for Nicolas. I would say the Spanish title, but I don't think that I could do it real justice in pronouncing it correctly. Do you want to give a try at that?
Not even a little bit.
Nicholas lives happily with his mom, who tells him stories of a magical world, a world where 6 warriors fight for peace in a warring country. She makes Nicholas costumes for each warrior: a cowboy, a monkey, a pirate, a knight, a yeti, and a skeleton. She concludes her story telling Nicholas that a mysterious wizard made a deal with the knight, that a monster would eat all the nightmares of those in the warring country, which would in turn stop the fighting. In return, the wizard takes the one girl in the country who does not have nightmares for themselves and leaves to live in a faraway tower. Nicholas is then, for unexplained reasons, sent to stay with his grandparents. He joins his cousin, who has also been separated from his father for unknown reasons. The two boys struggle to get along until one night, Nicholas awakes to a monster eating the nightmares of his cousin. Nicholas is sucked into the world of his mother's stories and begins an adventure to save the girl taken by the wizard. Eventually, joined by his cousin, now fast friends, they save the young girl in the tower, and the wizard, who turns out to be a kind, beautiful woman, gives all nightmares back to the country, stating that nightmares must be defeated and not avoided. But yeah, what'd you think about this?
Yeah, so, I mean, going into the movie, I knew that this was going to be a children's story, and I read the first line of the synopsis that HBO provided, and I was like, oh no, like, this kid loses his mom. Like, they're gonna dwell on this for so long, and
like
they
a
didn't.
Pixar movie would.
Yeah, like I thought like this was gonna be like him like using these warriors to like get over the grief of losing his mom, but really like he handles the loss really well. Kind of. There's kind of some half and half, I will admit, but I like how they told like how she does leave, and now, as you mentioned, we're not sure exactly what happened to her. I'm assuming she died, and that's the assumption that I'm going to follow as I kind of walk through this. But really, kind of get as like the movie ended, and he got like the little, like the memories book of his mom. Like, yeah, obviously, he misses her, and for me, that was also kind of a moment where I got the personal impression that was him defeating the nightmare of actually losing his mom. Like he kind of like comes to grips to it at that point, and he has a better understanding of it. So really like that. Also the voice acting for the movie. It's not great voice acting. It's genuine and it's real kids. And like in the classroom scene where like they're saying like, hey, like what would you find in a bathroom? Like a toothbrush. Like these are real kids who are being recorded, and I imagine actually in a classroom setting. And the young boy who voices Nicholas, I don't know his name, I should have looked it up, but I don't know if you stayed for the credits. They actually have like little clips of him doing the voice acting for it. Yeah.
Oh, I did not watch that.
Yeah. It is adorable. So like the coach will like give him the line, and then he'll say the line, and then kind of like moving on to it, and then it was definitely genuine voice acting from the kid's perspective.
What?
And one thing I also really loved about this movie that I didn't actually write down is that only in the synopsis would I have known that this young boy had Down syndrome.
Oh, that's really a thing? He's supposed to be a kid with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
Well, that would make sense why his eyes look different from everybody else's. Because I kept looking at his eyes and I was like, what's with this kid's eyes? I just thought it was like a weird stylistic choice. That's very interesting. Okay. Cool. I'm glad that you told me that. That is not something I knew. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So they don't dwell on it. They don't bring it up. Instead, they focus a lot on the actual like how people have different things that motivate them. So it's not what somebody is, it's how they do things and like the specifics about them. So I really love that storytelling element behind it. And to add into the storytelling, I really loved how I could not assume how the next part of the movie was going to go. Like this story really felt like a children's story. Like some kid like sat down and it's like, what do you want to have happen next? And it's like the pirate's gonna drink this bottle and then he's going to puke the sea of 1,000 moons out of his mouth, and then they're going to sell upon that and end up in an Iceland where they're gonna like run into a yeti, and it's like, what? Never.
That was very bizarre. Like the second he started throwing up, I was like, "What is going on? What am I watching?" It was so weird, but but fun. I mean, really, it worked. It was fun.
Yeah. So I love just how like bananas and just crazy off the wall, and you didn't know what was going to happen next, and like they took different realities to it, and the fact that it wasn't just like stories inside of his head. It was like, this is actually happening and these are actual monsters, really made me happy.
The fact that they really stuck with that too, I loved that because I mean, and I think one of the reasons this movie's different is because it does come from a Spanish filmmaker, and some of their storytelling conventions are different from what we're used to seeing in our American movies. And so the fact that like they got to just keep going to this world, I was like, cool, because you know what would have happened in the American version of this would have been like, oh, we can't go anymore. Like that would be the sad ending of like, oh, I'll miss you because I can't see you anymore. And this movie was like, nah, man, these kids are just like having adventures in this place every night after this. I was like, that's cool. I like that a lot. That made me happy. So I hear you there. One thing that and maybe like, I'm sure there's people who would very disagree. Was a lot more cheaply done and smaller, and it wasn't the big spectacle of Miyazaki, but kind of like the storytelling and kind of the weird things, the quirky, weird, kind of bizarre things that were happening. It almost felt like this filmmaker's like, I'm going to do Spirited Away that I want to do Spirited Away. Like that's just kind of like the feeling I got. And it just built this really like big and beautiful mystical world that just did not, it didn't feel like a Miyazaki movie when it came to like the look of it and even the way the story was told in it, but just how it was kind of like, here's this really weird world where weird things are happening. The guy puking up the sea being one example. Like that in my mind is like, I could see Miyazaki having a movie where a dude's just like, here's the sea for you. Blah! Like it just, I just got those vibes. And it looked, in the end, it had some hybrid animals. So I wonder if that filmmaker was taking a little cue from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't know. Maybe a little homage of just like, here's my crocodile beaver. Here's my this weird animal combination. So I thought that was really cool. I also really liked just the character design. Like this was kind of a like and a dislike because I feel like it almost felt like there were characters that came from two different movies. Like when I looked at like the character design on the cowboy, I didn't feel like that matched the same kind of character design on the pirate. Like it almost felt like they were from two different movies, but it still worked. And so there was the cowboy, I didn't love his design, but like the pirate, I thought he looked fantastic. And even, I already forgot the girl's name, the girl's uncle who was the honorable knight. I just loved his like design and his look. I really liked the way people looked in this movie, and even the animation, the way they moved. There was definitely moments where it was like it looked a little wonky because I think this was a cheaper animated production, and there was other times where they would be moving and I would be like, that is just animated beautifully, that looks awesome. So I really liked that. And the end message, so I guess like my feeling on the end message was more like, and this is where I think maybe there's something a little lost in translation for me in regards to like the language, but I guess my thought was like, nightmares are people's fears, and we all kind of have to face our fears rather than ignore them. And that's kind of what I was getting from it at the end. And maybe I'm like way off, but I just almost wonder if like the word nightmare is a little bit different in Spanish and can be interpreted a little bit differently. I don't know. So I guess if the movie was getting at what I thought it was getting at, I'm a really big fan, but I could be way off base for what this end message is. So I'm not sure about that, but anyway.
Yeah, man, I feel like those are great things. I like what you like, and I do also get the feeling that this could be like a Spanish version of a Miyazaki movie that's not like Guillermo del Toro or something like that. So it felt like a little bit of a smaller design. if I really had to go into like what I wanted more out of this movie, I really wanted like just more like total. Like this was a short movie. When I was looking at the runtime, I was like 50 minutes into it, and I was like, we only got like 30 minutes to wrap all this up, and like we only have 2 of the people. How are we gonna do this? And people just kind of like fall into place, and like they just happen to get things, and like things move a little bit faster. So there was never that feeling that of like being stuck or like the tragedy. And I'm not saying that's bad. Like for a kids movie, I feel like that's perfectly fine. Stay in the positives. Nicholas is your savior. He's gonna figure out how to get you through this. If he has to like paint his face like a skeleton and talk to a skeleton, nice. Also, didn't even come close to calling that out. Really, I just want this more into like a full body of work. You mentioned kind of Avatar: The Last Airbender before. If this could be something that could be adapted into a series similar to Avatar, and maybe they have the same production budget, maybe they have a little bit less, as long as they don't dip into like CGI, I think I would be okay and be happy with it. So I really wanted just more in that sense. Also, if they could also get like some English voice actors for this, I would still want them to do the voice acting how they did before, though. Like 100% would still want something of that effect. I love that element. I love that they added that in there. So I would like that to happen, but just getting it to a bigger audience. And I do feel like a lot of little kids can learn from a message like this, because in this point, like, yeah, kids want to be cool for their friends, and they want to do things, and they don't want to invite people to things because they think that they're not going to be good at it. But you never know until you try. It's not about who you know, but it's more about what you stand for. And I think that's just huge if you just give anybody a chance. So really loved it there. I don't think there's anything that I was like, I don't like that, or anything like that. I feel like it was a good movie from start to finish. I just wanted more of it. And if it was in English, that would have been a little bit easier to watch. That's where I'm at,
cool.
man.
Speaking of the 3D animation you mentioned, the CGI, how'd you feel about that dragon?
The dragon, I think, was a little over the top.
I felt that dragon didn't... I actually really liked the animation on the dragon. Like, I definitely realized it was CGI. It did not feel animated like the rest of the movie. But that worked for me. The cabin, the times when the cabin was definitely CGI, or the moving... Speaking of Miyazaki, I mean, that walking cabin was totally Howl's Moving Castle. But when I saw that, there was a few times where I was just like, it really took me out of the movie when I could just... It was very blatantly CGI. The dragon, I could tell was CGI, but it kind of worked for me. I thought it looked okay. So I was okay with that. Yeah, and I do agree with you where you were saying it was kind of, I don't know if this is the word to use, but moving a little bit too fast. I think that I think I talk about it a lot on this podcast, is I feel like so many more movies would be helped if they could have a little more patience. If they were willing to stop for like a minute and spend some time here and spend some time here and have a moment here where it's just like, slow down, quiet down. Let's all just take a minute to appreciate this, and then we can move on to our story, or take a minute to like give these people a moment that is a little more heartfelt. This movie was kind of like, we're here, and then we're here, and now we're going to go up here, and now we're down here, and now he's back at school, and now we're going back into the world again. And it just felt so, it was like, slow down. Like you could have made a 2-hour-long movie here, and if you just given us a few moments to pause and take a break, it would have worked better. And so that was one of the things that kind of like got on my nerves a little bit, was it was trying to do way too much in too little of time. And even like you said, like if it was a series, and even if it was like a 5 or 6 episode series where each was a half an hour, but we got a little bit more time in each of these places, a little more time at school, a little more time at home, a little more time with Papa and Grandma. I forgot what they call them, not Nana, I think. If we just got a little more time with these people, it would have been better. But also, though, and you kind of mentioned his mom, did I miss something? Or is it just kind of like his mom's gone, she's probably dead, we're not going to explain why, and that's it? Like, is that kind of... Like, did they explain it and I missed it? Sometimes those subtitles move pretty fast.
Yeah. I think there was a situation where you were paying attention to the subtitles and not exactly what was going on the screen.
That's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So the big key with the mom is that she's telling him the story, and when the story ends, they cuddle together, and then she floats off with like, well, pretty much she like turns into butterflies and like floats off, and then like a tear comes from his eye.
I majorly missed that. Wow. I probably
Yeah,
missed visually a lot of what was going on in this movie more than I thought. So it's definitely like she's dead for sure.
yeah,
Got that. Um, that's sad. I mean, I
yeah,
thought maybe she was somewhere else but alive. Like eventually, little Nicholas would have his mom back, but I guess he won't. That's sad. Uh yeah. Anyway, did you have any more thoughts on this movie?
I really enjoyed it. My son was actually watching it with me. So my son, he's exposed to Spanish, but he doesn't understand Spanish as much as say English.
Mm-hmm.
But just like the animation and like the character design and things like that, like really got him into it. And then he switched me up for Peppa Pig, but it's all right.
Yeah.
It happens.
I was gonna watch it with my boys, and we started it, and I was trying to figure out how to turn it to English, and I was like, guys, I'm sorry, like, there's not a way for you to watch this. And my kid lost his mind.
Oh,
It was annoying too, because he's been so good about fits lately. Like for the last like 3 or 4 weeks, I have not had to deal with this. And he's like, no, I want to watch this. And I was like, dude, you got to realize, like, this isn't just me saying no because I'm being a jerk. This is no because I literally can't do anything here. You can't read well enough or fast enough to read the subtitles here. And yeah, so he was sad about that, but it was okay. So
yeah. I would
he
love
just watched some Wild Kratts.
I would love for them to do maybe bring it back a little bit more. I think even a prequel would be really fun too. Of just like her telling him the stories and like the costume creation instead of getting like a montage moment, like having them express a little bit of like his upbringing or like how she handled knowing that he does have Down syndrome and like how she made him feel like he was included to things instead of excluded, which is a normal thing for that culture of people. So I think it was an awesome story, really fun, had a really great time. If I was to give it a rating, me myself, this is like a fantastic movie, and I'll probably go back and rewatch it. So probably like an 8 is what I would go.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'd probably give it like a 5. I probably won't ever watch it again. If it ends up getting an English voice cast, and again, as you mentioned, like I want them to do the exact same way that you mentioned it. Quick question on that too: was the young boy, was he Down syndrome who actually did the voice acting, or was it just another young kid?
I believe so, to be honest.
Okay.
So I didn't read a whole lot into it, but with the way how like he was getting assist and things like that, like I would assume so. But
what do you want to watch next week?
Yeah, man. So I got a notification, and I've been like half tempted to turn this off because I've been getting so many of them. But I got a notification for Inside Man, which is a new horror movie that came over to HBO Max.
Pretty sure Inside Man is a movie that came out in 2007 or 2006 starring Denzel Washington and Jodie Foster.
You would be 100% correct. Empty Man. That's what it is. Empty Man.
Empty Man. That makes more sense. I've seen Inside Man. I was 17 years old and saw it with a girlfriend at the time, so I haven't seen a lot of Inside Man, to be 100% honest with you. Nice. So I had a few thoughts. One was, there's really 3 options for me. I think whatever one of these 3 that you want. No Sudden Move. It's directed by Steven Soderbergh. It has David Harbour from Stranger Things in it. Don Cheadle. The Little Things. It's a movie that the script was written in the 90s by the same guy who wrote Seven, shortly after he wrote Seven. I guess it feels a lot like the movie Seven, but it's got like Denzel Washington and Rami Malek, and I just forgot his name, the 30 Seconds to Mars guy, Jason something. Yeah, I should probably know these things. Or The Empty Man. That was like my other choice. So if you really want to do Empty Man, that's what we could do. What do you think?
I feel like my wife would watch The Empty Man with me, so I'm gonna go
Okay.
with that one.
My wife will definitely not watch The Empty Man with me, but I watch most of my movies without her anyway. So let's do that.
Deal.
Anything else?
No. I
Okay.
appreciate you, man. Thanks for meeting with me again. What was this, episode 18?
18.
18
Okay.
episodes. Good.
LA. Have fun.
Thanks, buddy. Bye.
Bye.